All right, so we're back and ready to go. The recording's going. And first up are some discussions we had during the executive session and publicly. We are talking about two of our administrative staff, both Stephen Madcore and Gary Schmidt. And I'll start with Madcore. I did have an opportunity to call him. We're very satisfied, more than satisfied with his extraordinary work and his, what else can I say? Extraordinary work and his scarves and just the fact that he's very accessible. He seems to be a great manager. His hiring has been outstanding, and I spoke to him, and he would be satisfied to move to the next level, which is from 42 to 43 in the pay scale, and that also gives him some room in the future to advance. And would anybody else like to add anything?
Mr. Chairman, I just got an email from Martha. She says, quote, "I'm almost there, buddy." So
Okay.
she'll be with us momentarily. And I agree with your assessment of Mr. Madcore.
Sonia?
Yeah, so I really appreciate you, Stephen. I know you've heard this from me before, but all of our 21 listeners probably haven't. I particularly appreciate you always taking our calls, because when we as commissioners feel like we need advice from our lawyer, we need it right now. And I've never had to wait more than a few hours to have a conversation with you in my whole many years now as a commissioner. You provide outstanding advice. I trust you. I rely on what you say. I think Clackamas County is in excellent hands, and I just appreciate you so much.
Thank you. It's very thoughtful.
Thank you. So, Stephen, are you satisfied?
Yes, I am satisfied.
All right.
Thank you.
You need to give a number or a percentage, and then you need to vote on it.
Well, so can you tell us what that is?
Heather Pedersen is here. Heather, go ahead.
Yes, my understanding from the previous conversation is that you wanted to grant Stephen the equivalent of an $8,000 per year increase, which is approximately 3.9%. And that was what my understanding was.
Yeah, and that puts him in level 43 at about where in that level?
That would, hold on here. That multiple papers. Well, here, I have a question for you.
Okay.
As you know, Mr. Madcore's salary increase was actually due back in March, on March 1, but because of everything that's happened over the last several months, it's just now happened. We're just now having this conversation at this point. So is that something that you would want to happen retroactively to March 1? Or, yes. Okay.
Are we good with that?
Yes.
And Martha's got now here and has her hand up. So yes, retro.
Okay.
Martha.
Sorry, I was a few minutes late. I had a phone call from my daughter. So in any case, I imagine I've missed most of it, but whatever you folks, you just want to fill me in on what the offer is. And I want to say nice things about Mr. Madcore too. He's really fun to work with.
So we're moving him from level 42 to 43, which amounts to about an $8,000 increase. And it would be retroactive to March.
Okay, thank you.
Which translates to 3.9%.
Okay.
Correct. And so that would take his salary that back in March from $206,818 to $214,818. And then the COLA would be rolled on that. So he would definitely have room in the higher salary grade 43 for future merit increases.
Great. And Stephen's satisfied with that.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now to Gary. I did have an opportunity to talk to Gary between meetings.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
Do you need a motion to move this forward?
do we?
Yes, yes.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman, I move that we grant our attorney a 3.9% raise to total $8,000. Move him from section 42 to section 43 of our salary code and make it retroactive to March 1st.
second. Any further discussion? Please poll.
Okay, Commissioner Fisher,
Aye.
Commissioner Humbertson,
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader,
Aye.
and Chair Bernard.
Aye, motion carries unanimously. Paul is unable to attend this afternoon. And the next person is Gary Schmidt. I did have an opportunity to talk to Gary. I think that 2020 has been an extraordinary year, not only with the racial unrest, the fires, the budget, the COVID. Gary has exceeded our expectations in every way. Not only thanks to his communication skills, his ability to work with folks. So we have offered Gary, well, Gary is interested in a 7% increase. And he'd stay in the same pay scale, 44, and a 7% increase. He'd prefer not just a bonus, but a 7% increase, which we
Okay.
do on. And are we good with that?
So moved.
All right. Gary, would you like to add anything?
Commissioners, I'm very grateful and humbled of your offer. I, of course, will gratefully accept. It is a privilege to serve you in this organization, and I think I surprised myself and probably some of you of how I stepped up when the time was right and needed for all of us. And you know, I don't do all this myself. There's an incredible team of leaders at Clackamas County that I support and help them to do their best work. So we are all working together to help support you, commissioners, and our public. But I gratefully accept your very kind offer to recognize my work. Thank you very much.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Please poll us.
Commissioner Fisher,
Aye.
Commissioner Humbertson,
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader,
Aye.
and Chair Bernard.
Aye, motion carries unanimously. I'd just like to add that we're very lucky to have two outstanding public servants in Gary and Stephen Madcore. The county is in good hands.
Okay.
And now we're going to move on to the next item, which is a statement by the county commission. Gary?
Yes, so commissioners, Public and Government Affairs staff has drafted a potential statement for you that was emailed to you, and let me just read it for you as soon as I can pull it up here. It is this. Accurate information is absolutely vital for a safe, effective, and swift response to the ongoing wildfires threatening Clackamas County. The Board of County Commissioners relies on county public safety officials to be transparent and accurate with verified public information rather than any based on rumors or unsubstantiated reports. This is critical for mutual trust between the board, county staff, and the residents of Clackamas County. Our collective focus needs to be on keeping people safe, preventing crime, and using the investigatory resources we have to establish facts. We stand for accurate and complete information and will insist that any data reported to us is first confirmed. So commissioners, we are seeking if you approve this statement or if you would like to make any changes, it would come from all of you as the Board of County Commissioners.
Would you like a motion?
If yes, or
Okay.
Twitter edits, yes.
So moved as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? I'd just like to add, this might be a statement I could read tonight at the news conference at 6 o'clock, I believe. Would that be appropriate?
Community meetings at 6, there's a press conference at 3, so either one of those. But you're going to the 6 o'clock session, yes.
I could do the 3 o'clock if they have room for me. Let's check with Sue.
Okay.
All right, so please poll us.
Okay, Commissioner Fisher,
Aye.
Commissioner Hubbardston,
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader,
Aye.
and Chair Bernard.
Aye, motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Gary.
Great, thank you. So with that, commissioners, we're ready to go to our first scheduled policy session. So Heather's already left. Thank you, Heather, for being here. We'll move now to Housing Authority Development Updates. We have Jill Smith and Stephen McMurtry from the Housing Authority of Clackamas County. I'll remind you, commissioners, you will now be sitting as the Housing Authority of Clackamas County for this policy session. So as soon as they are in, there's Jill, there's Stephen. So Jill, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, commissioners. Thank you for this opportunity to provide you with an update of development activities. There's a lot happening with our development team at the Housing Authority, and at your request, we've put together a first report out on all of the different development activities happening. And this is our first go at this. So if there are things missing or things you'd like to hear or see, please let us know. We do plan to bring this back to you monthly. And I'll turn it over to Stephen.
Thank you, Jill, and thank you to everyone. Again, as Jill mentioned, this is our first of what we anticipate being monthly updates to the board regarding development activities. What I have presented to you today is informational only and is representative of the Housing Authority specific projects that we have moving forward. What we do not have listed, because it's a little bit early in the game, are the 3 Metro bond projects that have been approved for conceptual move forward with Metro and with your approval, but have not really started their process of getting into the due diligence. So what we have here today is an update on Webster Road, which is a Metro bond project, but again, that is the Housing Authority that is acting as the sole developer on that one, the 48 units there. And what I've tried to do is provide information that shows project development activities that have been accomplished within the last month and a half, and what we anticipate to be accomplished coming forward in the next month and a half. Because it will be a monthly update, there will be times that I will say that we will not have what seems to be much progress, at least on paper. And then we will have flurries of activity where a lot of things will be getting done as we start to hit milestones in these projects as they move forward. Starting with Webster Road, that's the 48 units. It is still listed as pre-development. We have been working diligently with Walsh Construction, who is our contractor on board for this one, along with Carlton Hart Architecture, to move forward on getting us to the permit process. That's been the main priority, and repricing the project as we move along to look for opportunities to reduce construction costs. And what we anticipate coming in the next month is working primarily with the church that is next door to us for additional parking opportunities. That was a request of the neighborhood, and funding applications both with Oregon Housing and Community Services and with Metro as we move this towards a construction closing that we hope to be in late first quarter of 2021. And I will pause there if there are any questions about Webster Road, or I can move on to the next one. Okay.
Sorry, I'm looking at the packet and you, so I cannot see any hands risen. So if anyone
Fair
has
enough.
a question.
There are no hands risen.
What I'll do is
great.
I'll run through things, and then maybe we can come back and ask any general questions after that. The next update is on Hillside Park, and that is our community there in Milwaukee. We've been working on what is called a Section 18 disposition with HUD. That would give us the ability to demolish and redevelop that site. So we would remove and temporarily relocate all 100 units that are there, and redevelop the site for a more densified neighborhood and bring back those units. And as I talk about Hillside Park and we go forward, we all know that we've gone through a master plan on this process with the city of Milwaukee and the Ardenwald neighborhood and all of our input. So when I represent those 100 units, that is the replacement of those 100 units that the Housing Authority anticipates being the sole developer of. So those existing public housing units that we anticipate bringing back to that site. This is irrespective of other developments that may go forward, at that particular location. It's just talking about those first 100 units. So as we move through this, right now we have recently completed our environmental review process with the help of community development here in Clackamas County. And it is out for public comment, with that public comment concluding in late September, on September 21st. Once those comments are addressed, we will then submit for final approval from HUD. And we are also working on a transportation impact assessment along with the city of Milwaukee on that site. Early findings have found that there would be no, but our development, even at the up to additional 400 units that we would propose there, 400 new units that we would propose there, as having no significant impact on those roads, but we still want to get that transportation impact assessment done with the city of Milwaukee. So that's taking a lot of our time right now. And we just keep plugging along through the land use process with the city of Milwaukee. And we hope to arrive at about this time next year, ready to break ground, hopefully on the first development there. And then lastly, Hillside Manor. Hillside Manor is, of course, the 100 units that we have under construction right now. And I just want to quickly take a second, I think I've done before, I'll do it again. The absolutely amazing contracting, architecture, the overall development team that's there, hack staff. I heard it mentioned just previous to this, all of the things that have happened in 2020, all of those things have happened in 2020, also to arguably one of our most medically fragile populations that is undergoing construction in the tallest building in Milwaukee right now. So the impacts of the fire, the pandemic, and all of that going on, and it really has been an amazing rallying of our resident services team, all of the housing authority staff, outside stakeholders, and our wonderful construction team with Walsh Construction and our architects from Scott Edwards Architects that have really helped this thing move forward through all of that. We have just finished moving back the first bank of residents to some of the units on the 8th and 9th floor. And we are getting ready to move the next wave of residents out. Of course, we had the fires, which waylaid our plans a little bit. So we are actually moving folks out a little bit later than we had hoped. I've provided just a few brief pictures to you. It's kind of tough to get real good pictures of what's going on right now because we have such an elongated construction cycle that's going on, but just some quick snapshots of the units, interiors, and as we get into the corridors, the revamped office spaces, the community room spaces, and all that, we'll get more and more updated pictures to you. And then once we get out of the fall and winter months and we get into the spring, then we can start to look at the outside facade changes that are happening also. We are moving out those residents on the east side of the building on the 7th floor coming up here, like I mentioned, in the next week. And it is a flurry of activity there. Again, the fires have slowed us down a little bit, so we had to pull our crews off because of air quality concerns. We, just as much as we don't want to put the residents in jeopardy, we also don't want to put our construction crews in jeopardy. So we made the decision to pull them off for a couple of days, all except for our abatement contractors who are actively working there to keep the schedule going. So I'll pause there for just a second and see if there are any general questions about the pipeline of projects that I just mentioned here, and then I can get a little bit more into what I anticipate coming over the next couple of months.
First, I want to introduce Ann Linstra, who is also our Housing Authority Commissioner. Thank you for joining us today. And Ken, and then Sonia.
So, Stephen, I have a question regarding the transportation study at the Hillside Manor property. With 400 new units, I know the roads there, drive them frequently, and I've seen the 100 individual units that we'll be tearing down and replacing, and most of them have cars in front of them most of the time. Mm-hmm. I'm kind of curious as to how the traffic study came to the conclusion that there would be no significant impact.
Yeah, that's a great distinction, and thank you for that question. The truth of the matter is, and the city of Milwaukee is very well aware of this, is that the intersection of 32nd and Harrison, it has been at capacity for some time. And with the overall growth that is anticipated in that part of the community, both with the McFarland property that is coming on, and the Murphy site that is also anticipated to be developed right in there, that the overall traffic impact will not greatly increase the already compressed issues at 32nd and Harrison. And that's the analysis that's being done. So what they're saying is it's already an area of interest and had been identified that there's traffic and congestion issues there, but the overall growth in the area and the anticipated changes that the city of Milwaukee is going to undertake, they don't see this as being a market increase to the problems. Now, that's what the traffic impact study shows, and that's what's being worked on and communicated with the city of Milwaukee. We're also asking those same things because of the Murphy and the McFarland sites, because they're not coming in and asking for zone changes. They aren't necessarily required to meet the same standards or expectations, but we are asking that they're taken into consideration here.
It sounds a little bit like it's so bad that it can't get any worse no matter what you do.
Well, I think those of us who know the area, the train running right across the road right there is a challenge. And I think that's one of the big things that's impacting that, candidly.
So are there, what mitigating factors are we anticipating doing as part of the project, given that there's bound to be an increase in traffic?
Well, some of the things that we're taking into account is working very, very diligently with the Ardenwald neighborhood, as well as the city of Milwaukee, to really define what the through streets will ultimately become there on the property. And the reason that I bring that up, there is some question about the north-south connection road, whether or not it would be open to vehicular traffic or not. The city of Milwaukee's code is a little ambiguous about that right now. But the reason that that's an important piece, because what we'd like to do overall in the development, and we believe is the right thing to do, is to try and provide alternative routes either through our site to bring people out either further north or further south of where the site is, mainly further north, but also to reduce vehicular traffic throughout the overall property. We're going to work with the city on parking requirements, increase rideshare opportunities. We've been talking with TriMet, we've been talking with other organizations in Clackamas County about increased transit opportunities here to try and reduce the amount of cars that'll be associated with these units. I do think that, again, those units that are closest to the Ardenwald neighborhood on our north, that are more single family in design and might be closer to market rate or first time home buyer, might have higher parking ratios than what we will see in the southern part of the site. As the Murphy site directly to our south also gets developed out, we're having conversations with those property owners about what parking and rideshare opportunities there might be there. We're not going to be able to change that 32nd and Harrison connection, but what we hopefully can do is change some of our own parking and vehicular needs within the development.
So not unlike the projects we discussed this morning, are we actually going to have a 0.5 automobile ratio to one portion of the property?
Well, I apologize. I'm not sure what sites were discussed this morning. I think some of the early conversations that we've had with the city of Milwaukee and some of the modeling that we've done has been closer to a 0.8 overall. And realizing that we'll have areas that are a little bit more dense, like I mentioned, maybe higher parking ratios based on building type and lower parking ratios in different areas, as well as using on-street parking, but really trying to promote, as much as we can, alternative methods to needing to own a vehicle in this neighborhood. I mean, that's something the city of Milwaukee has been a big proponent of, and that's something that we're working towards.
Thank you.
Tanya.
Hey, thanks, Stephen. I appreciate you being here. So we've heard a lot, or we're experiencing a lot in regards to air quality in all of our indoor spaces. And I know that with COVID, there was concerns about air filtration and how circulation works inside of different spaces. And now with the wildfires, you can't really, it's not an invisible contaminant anymore. So I'm just curious. I know that we started this effort before COVID and before the wildfires, but what efforts are being made, especially at Webster Road and Hillside Manor, to make sure that air is circulating within the units individually and that there isn't cross contamination and that we have clean indoor air quality in these sites?
Great question. Thank you for that one. I'll start with Hillside Manor. You know, Hillside Manor, Hillside Manor is a project that on a unit by unit basis, you know, we've had to make difficult decisions about where our overall limited amount of money would be able to go. One of the things that we really wanted to focus on is on that air quality issue. So every bathroom fan has what's called it's either a Panasonic or equivalent, called a Whisper Green continuous airflow fan. So in other words, it runs at a very low cubic volume until there's occupancy in the room. And then a sensor reads that somebody's walked in and it ramps up. So it's continuously drawing air from the units up and out to a central shaft. So that's one thing that helps with unit interior air quality. And that thing runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, just pulling air in to always make sure that there's a fresh air intake, because code is changing so fast in our building envelopes and what we are allowed to do. Once upon a time, it used to be that you just undercut your entry door and you pulled in all the smells from the corridor. So if somebody had something going on in the corridor, you were just pulling that in. You can't do that any longer, so we have to get a little more creative. So that's one step that we did. The other thing is we recognized that when we audited the tenants, and Anne may remember this process as well, one of the things that we talked about was overall building air quality, and it scored very, very low. So we spent a tremendous amount of money making sure that we could go through and replace all of the fresh air intake lines in the building, and to reposition and update and modernize the rooftop units that would draw in fresh air so that it could be recirculated into each unit without commingling. A lot of times in these older buildings, what would happen is you'd have one centralized shaft. So if somebody was cooking a couple of units down, you may actually get their cooking smell in your unit. Similarly, if somebody was smoking, even though that's not allowed, you could get their smoke come into your unit. Now we have alleviated that by redesigning the entire air intake and air filtration system. So it's a very exhaustive step at Hillside Manor.
Can I just ask one clarifying question? Sure. You said to bring in fresh air. What happens, and hopefully we won't be at this for very long, but if there is climate change and we could have wildfires with us for quite some time, what happens if the air outside isn't fresh? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we have some extremely, the only way that I can put it is these huge air scrubbers. In other words, so they bring, as the fresh air gets drawn into the building, they go through an electrostatic filtration system that takes particulates out of the air and then filters them again through another fresh air scrubber and into the building. It's not 100%, but it is worlds better than it was. There's really no comparison, especially with redesigning all of the mechanical system as well. That's what we really did to help that efficiency and that fresh air intake. You know, the concerns of climate change are real and they're valid. And this is something that with these older buildings, we will have to continually look at, because when you are required to draw in fresh air, and so we will have to look at those systems. But right now it's a very, very advanced air scrubbing system that happens to circulate clean air through the building.
And is it possible, like we're all being educated right now, to turn off our flow of hazardous air coming into our indoor spaces? Is it possible for people to do that?
Yeah, typically, this is a unique situation. So the answer to that is yes, but typically the way that you would solve for that and the makeup air, the fresh air, would be then to open your windows. And in the situation that we have right now with wildfires and toxic air, that is not a recommended practice. We are not telling residents to do that. And so what we're doing is we're relying on these heavier mechanical systems to try and clean and scrub that air. It is a much better solution than opening up your windows at this time and trying to draw in fresh air from outside.
Yeah, I was just wondering if they could turn off the vents for outside air.
They can, but it wouldn't be recommended because then you just have stagnant air in the building. I mean, I think it can be done intermittently. We're certainly not drawing in smoke, if that's the concern right now. That is what we are not doing that. We're not drawing in smoke, or we're trying to limit it as best we can. It's just a very unique situation, and this is something that the industry will have to continue to look at. And then your question about Webster Road, I can answer that with, we have an extremely state-of-the-art heating and air conditioning system that is also centralized. I can get you the information if you're interested. It's called a VRF system. It's extremely high efficiency, and it allows for one unit to basically give every unit within the building the ability to adjust their airflow and also their heating and cooling capabilities. It comes at a very high price, but for this type of building and the age of the building and the way it lays out and the population, it was the best solution.
Yeah, I just want to add that there's a lot of confusion. You know, they don't call, if you have a heat pump, which Sonia, I believe you probably do. No, you have a furnace? Well, generally a furnace is only cycling inside air. It's not bringing air from the outside. You won't find a connection on the outside. Heat pumps, you do have a connection on the outside? Really? Huh.
Yeah, we really struggled that's why I'm so aware of this for a while, because I had to figure out where my vents were coming in from the outside to circle fresh air. But we figured it out and we closed them up, and now we're okay. But it's an issue to cut off that outside air when there's toxic smoke outside.
Yeah, so I mean, in one of our houses, we have individual units for each area of the house that works off one heat pump. And the heat pump does not bring in fresh air. Heat pump just heats the air or cools the air. In our home, the inside air is recycled through filtration, but it does not bring in outside air. That's why they don't call them furnaces anymore. If you say furnace to a guy, the guy says they're not furnaces. Anyway. All right. Also, I just wanted to add that, you know, I'm very familiar with Hillside. You'd be surprised how many people don't drive cars. Frankly, they can't afford to drive cars. And with the bus stop right there, a lot of people utilize those bus stops. And a grocery store is not too far away up on 42nd. And then the farmers market's on Main Street, downtown Milwaukee. So anyway. Anything additional you want to add, Stephen?
Yeah, the only thing that I was going to add is just coming back to what you will see in within the next month or so is you'll start to get this same sort of report. If you know, any feedback is always appreciated, whether or not this is the right kind of information that you'd like to see, differing information you'd like to see. I appreciate any feedback that you could get to Jill or I. In addition, as we start to move forward with these Metro Bond projects that have gotten their conceptual endorsement, as they start to set themselves on their own closing timelines, we will also be bringing in those projects to alert you to where they are at. You know, one thing that we have, and so you'll see similar information for each one of those. What's the unit count? You know, how many units are we serving between 30% or 80%? They're utilizing bond funds, et cetera, and when we anticipate their closing timelines to be. You know, this is something that we've also been working on information for HUD, who are asking for, it's asking for similar information as they're looking at their own pipeline and the amount of work that the Housing Authority of Clackamas County is bringing forward, and it's not insignificant. So even our partners at HUD are saying, you know, get us on a closing timeline because we know you guys are bringing a lot of work, and that's what we're trying to do, get these units built.
Thank you. Jill, you want to add anything?
Just how grateful I am to Stephen and his team. We've got a lot happening, and their organization and commitment to mission is leading all this work. And I know that you share that commitment, and I really want you to feel like you're getting the information that you want. You asked for this, so please send Stephen and I an email if there's something that was missing so we can edit this.
That sounded an awful lot like, be careful what you wish for, you might get it.
That's not what I meant.
No, I appreciate the update. Thank you.
All right, and thank you. And Ann, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Ann.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Gary, what's up next?
Next, we are returning as the Board of County Commissioners. We have the C800 Public Safety Radio System Replacement Project Update. We have John Hartsock and Krista Wolf as the main presenters. And so we'll bring them into the room. And I'll ask Krista to kick it off, please.
Thank you, Gary. Good morning or good afternoon, commissioners. It's been a busy day. I'm sure it's been very busy for all of you as well. I'm hoping John can connect here in just a moment.
There he is.
John, wonderful. So I'm Krista Wolf, Deputy Director of the Finance Department, and I am here literally as the department liaison for the fabulous C800 Clackamas Radio Group. Today we have John, who is the manager there, who's going to give you a project update. I'm sure you're all very well acquainted with John and the wonderful work that C800 is doing to update our radio systems, which is critical for our first responders. And so with that, I am going to hand it off to John, who is going to give you an update on the project.
Hi, John.
Good afternoon, commissioners. It's a pleasure to be meeting with you even through this interesting approach to meetings these days. I provided you a handout, and I think just so we can go through it quickly, I'm going to go ahead and show it as a PowerPoint. And please interrupt me if you have questions or as we go along, and I'll make this brief because I know you know most of the information, but just so that we're keeping you up to date of where we are on the project. C800 is now comprised of 19 public safety agencies. It's all the police and fire organizations within Clackamas County, which was our goal when we started out, and has been achieved. And so I answer to a 19-person board, but it's a very cooperative, good organization, and we've made good progress. I gave you the history of C800, which again, most of you know, formed in 2000 as an ORS 190, a cooperative between all of the public safety agencies to provide the public safety radio system throughout the county. The initial was some regional planning of what we all needed to do. It was determined that Portland and Clark County would go out on their own, but that Washington County and Clackamas County would maintain their partnership, which has been very successful and has allowed us to really build a very robust system that has been proven in these last few weeks. The partnership is still strong, and the board meets monthly to set strategic plans, a budget, and it's funded through the C800 group is funded through user fees. This is the team that is running the project, headed by the board, with myself as the project leader, co-project leader over in Washington County, Ron Policani, project manager, and then a team to work through this project. A little bit of the history, as I say, the planning started back in 2008, looking at the entire metro region and how we can best provide public safety communications. The important note is that Clark County, Washington, Multnomah County, City of Portland, Washington County, Clackamas County, now City of Salem, Newburgh, are all tied together through these systems for interoperability, that you can use this, be able to talk to all of those agencies in the metro region, and now, as I say, Salem. We started in 2012, right after the bond passed, to do architectural and engineering. We went out and purchased equipment, all of which is in the process of being installed. These are the locations throughout the county. Some of these names are a little more familiar because of the current fire activity. We have been blessed, I'll say, that we've heard, we haven't actually had eyes on these sites, the new sites we're adding here along Highway 224 to cover that forested area. But we've been told by the Forest Service that all 3 sites are fine and haven't been damaged by fire. Same is true of Timberline and Tom, Dick, and Harry. Day Hill was close, Highland Butte was close, and so was Redland Road, but none of them have been damaged, so we feel very blessed in that issue. The 2 sites I'm going to talk about here in a couple of seconds are up here in the Lake Oswego area that we still are struggling to find the sites. As far as the existing sites, there are a number of them that are completed and ready to go. The Goat Mountain site will be done by the end of this month. Of course, right now we're precluded from going to the site, so that might be extended a bit, but it's upgrading that site with new tower structure upgrades and power systems. Timberline is a change out of fuel tank, which will happen probably at this point in the spring. At CCOM, we've made major upgrades to the power system, to the fire suppression system, and probably the most visible is we have replaced all of the consoles on the dispatch floor, and blessed again that the fire didn't get close to there. And that work is again scheduled to be completed. We have a small amount of grounding work to be done by the end of the month again, once we can get back in there. And then LOCOM will be putting new consoles in their new city hall when they move into that. The new sites, again, Barton, Canby, Crutcher, that whole list on top there has been completed. Tom, Dick, and Harry, Whalehead, and Oak Grove are all within the Forest Service. Memaloose has been turned over to us. Whalehead is going to be turned over at the end of September. So those are both done. Buildings, towers are all there. Oak Grove is underway, and again, we're scheduled for October 30th, depending on how long we'll be delayed by being able to get back up there. Tom, Dick, and Harry is still waiting on some final approvals, and that won't be completed until probably next spring. Probably the biggest area that I'm sure you've recently heard about is we need 2 sites in the Lake Oswego West Lynn area for in-building coverage. And again, I won't read through all of this. It's for you to read, to go through. We had a site in Lake Oswego, Cook's Butte. We had a lease with the city, and the city rescinded the lease. We looked at another site. The site we found was in West Lynn. It was a piece of county property surrounded by city of West Lynn property, but all building land use processes and building permits would come through the county. The way it was zoned is it was an allowed use for our process. Well, the county's planning department doing the right thing, advising West Lynn, and West Lynn wasn't pleased about having a tower in their community. We heard, just like we heard at the meetings on the Cooks Butte site that the citizens were all in favor of public safety, just not here. Gary Schmidt participated in some of the Westland discussions, and he and John Williams, the interim city manager in Westland, and I came to a conclusion that what we need to do is just pull back on these two sites. They're important for in-building coverage. We have on-the-street coverage in Lake Oswego, Westland, but these will enhance the in-building in some of those areas that are key importance to us, our schools and public buildings. So we really feel within the urban growth boundary, we want that additional coverage. So Gary Schmidt's going through Resolution Services, we're going to set up some meetings in January to do some public meetings and see if we can't come to a resolution. The reason we're waiting till January is that we will have the system on the air in late December, January, and we'll be able to do some real on-the-street coverage to truly verify our need for this in-building coverage. So this is one thing that will be coming up in the future. The initial schedule was for us to be done in 2019. I was probably a little too optimistic with that. It's a complex multi-site project, and the delays have really been in land use and permitting. It took us over 2.5 years with the Forest Service, even though they were very cooperative. It just takes time to get through their process. Our current target is to have the radio system on the air in late January, early February, and then all of the cleanup work we have some old towers to remove and some closeout work and the Tom, Dick, and Harry site, and potentially this Westland Lake Oswego site, we would be totally complete by June of 21. Funding, the voters approved Measure 3476 in May of 16, authorized $59 million in general obligation bonds. It's important to note, pretty proud of the fact that the measure was approved by a 71% margin. We were very concerned going into this that the folks would understand, and they truly did, and turned out to support the measure. The county entered into an intergovernmental agreement with C800 in December to execute and manage. There have been additional funds added to the project, one in the form of a bond premium that we knew when we sold the bonds, and some interest earnings, which have been sizable, and some site use fees from PGE, where we have 10.2 million sitting there for what will be a total budget of 69 million. The funds will first be used as needed for project contingency. At the moment, we don't think we're going to need them for that. And then the remainder I'll talk about here in a few minutes, a few seconds. And we've expended to date 55.5 million, so we're well along with the project. First, future actions by you will be: one, county staff has recommended an amendment to the IGA, and it defines the cost. One of the things that was in the amendment is that C800 would pay any out-of-pocket costs the county would have for administrating and fiscal management of the bond, which there have been some. And this kind of clarifies the terms of that and sets an amount, which is good, so that we can make sure that happens. And it's anticipated, and some other minor language changes, it's anticipated that the amendment will be presented by probably the end of September, and Christy can speak more to that, but we're, from a state 100 perspective, we're ready to go on that. The way the premium dollars were set up in the IGA is that the C800 board would make a list of those items that they wanted to add back in or add to the project, understanding that any of the money from the bond dollars have to be spent matching what we told the public in the voters pamphlet. So it's very important that they align with the goals of the project. We can't go out and do something else with the money. The approval process then has to go through the Citizen Advisory Committee, which, by the way, have been very helpful. I'm glad we've had them on the project. They've added good insight, and they've been monitoring as we go along. And we would bring that then to the board for a recommendation for you to approve, probably in the November, late November, early December timeframe. The three items that the board has identified is they had to, when we set up the bonds originally so that we could maintain our cost per thousand, the agencies agreed that they would pay half of the cost of their mobile and portable radios, and they'd like that to be reimbursed so that the bond pays for 100%. We're talking about some in-vehicle repeaters to help coverage. It doesn't solve our Westland Lake Oswego thing, but it would. There are some areas that in-building repeaters will be, or in-vehicle repeaters will be very important. And then the last is there isn't a communications command vehicle. So that's one of the items. That's kind of the third item on the list. We had a long laundry list that everybody went through and voted, and those are kind of the three items we're looking at. One of the things about the system that's important is resiliency. We're upgrading all of the sites as well as building the new sites to withstand a magnitude 9 earthquake, upgrading the existing, as I say. One of the key points that's really come out during this fire issue is having adequate electrical that we don't lose power. We can operate our sites, all of ours and the ones in Washington County, for up to 4 weeks without having to refuel the sites. I sit in on a daily call with the state Emergency Operations Center on communications, and it's just amazing to me how many of the cellular providers, they barely can last a day and all of a sudden they need fuel. Well, the lesson that we're being told, and I believe, that if we have the big earthquake, it's going to be 2, maybe 3 weeks before we can get fuel. So that's where our 4-week goal came from. And we're proving that the system works, which is important. The last is our dragon here, which is our microwave network. This is where all the sites are, and they are all interconnected so that if we lose the link from any one site to another, there's another link to that site so that we can maintain system operability during a major event or a potential catastrophe or just a electronic loss of one of the links. Couple quick pictures. This happens to be the site in Damascus, which is on top of a hill, and it's kind of what a typical site looks like. The communications building, fuel tank, 1,000-gallon fuel tank, generator, and then in this case, a 180-foot tower. This is kind of all of the radios when we were back at staging at Motorola, where all the system was set up and tested so that we knew it would operate and really go through a thorough factory acceptance. This is the Crutcher bench site. This is up above Lolo Pass. Challenging site. We had about a mile and a half of road to build and had to bring in a mile and a half of power on for instance, on the 3 sites off Highway 224, we're bringing about 12 miles worth of power in. And in fact, we had to rebuild a bridge to get to the site there at Crutcher Bench. So it's just like I say, it's kind of one of the more difficult sites, but it's kind of what you run into when you're building these remote sites. So with that, I'll quit blabbling along and be glad to answer any questions.
Microphone.
Chair Bernard, your microphone's off.
You caught me. See, now we're all jumping on one another. Martha first and then Kim.
Hi, John. It's nice to see you again.
Nice to see you.
Yep. So my question is, with all these fires, I'm looking at this map. Oak Grove, Whalehead, Mamaluce, Goatman, Day Hill, are those all, have they been impacted at all?
They
Because
have not, fortunately. The fire, up Goat Mountain, one of the blessings is Weyerhaeuser, I think 2 years ago, year and a half ago, logged that entire hilltop. So there's very few trees around us, and that was a good thing. The other sites, the fire hasn't gotten there, and we're hoping it won't.
okay, why, another, just to follow up too, why is Sawtell green? You've got the radio sites in red and, you know, the existing and the new, but Sawtell has a little green dot. Is there some significance to that, or just?
It's existing.
Okay, it's existing. Okay, thank you.
Ken?
Hey, Sparky, how are you?
Good.
The sheriff today alluded to a problem that he had. As you know, people have their own police scanners. They monitor the police department radios and sheriff's department's radios, and then unfortunately they have a tendency to show up at places and actually confuse the scene. And his comment was that and apparently he's made this comment before, though I don't recall having heard it myself, they need a secure channel that nobody can listen to. Is that possible in this system?
It is possible in this system. It is designed into the new system. The new system will have all of the law frequencies encrypted that people can't listen to. What we will do, though, is for people that the law enforcement want, the press and others that they would want to eventually hear it, is we will put a time delay that in fact the dispatcher could control, that it'll be, say, a 5-minute delay, and then they can hear the transmission for exactly the reason you stated. There will be people showing up at the scene before they can get there and manage it. So it's, Portland has gone to this, so has Clark County, Washington County, and so will Clackamas County go to an encrypted law channels. It's capable on the fire side, but fire at the moment has decided not to encrypt their channels, except they have one channel where they can talk to law encrypted.
Thank you. I just knew he had a need and wondered if it was going to be able to be fulfilled.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, John. I assume that they have generators, and that's why you have fuel storage, correct? So, okay.
We have a combination of a battery bank and generators and 1,000 gallons of fuel. And the way we've arranged this is that we let the batteries run the site. When they start to get low, they tell the generator to start. And when you time all of that going on and off all the time, it allows us to have 4 weeks of support at the site.
Great. Now, Sonia lives at the top of a hill in Lake Oswego. I think you should talk to her.
I'm listening to every word that you're saying, but I turned off my video because I have to eat a snack because I didn't get lunch, and I don't like to do that on TV. But I've heard plenty about Lake Oswego and West Lynn, so I appreciate the thoughtful approach being taken. Thank you.
Yeah. And also, Martha lives in Lake Oswego if you need a site there.
Right.
Actually, it'd probably be a lot easier if you didn't have a 1,000-gallon tank of gas or fuel there. But all right. Well, anything else, Krista, you want to add?
Sorry, it's always inconvenient to find your mouse when you're trying to unmute, isn't it? So, no, commissioners, I think the IGA updates are fairly routine, nothing really exciting there. Some legal language updates, again, some agreed upon fee coverage for some of these administrative costs when it comes to legal fees and things that you need to pay for, and taking care of bond funds. And so we'll just get that on a regular consent agenda for you all.
All right. All right, thank you. John, how's Damascus doing out there?
Well, fortunately, the Supreme Court saved us all.
Yes, yes. All right. Well, thank you, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you very much. I look forward to it.
Good job. Thank you. Gary, what's up next?
Right, next, commissioners, is motel acquisition for shelter strategy. This is a session you've asked for previously. We have staff from Health, Housing, and Human Services, Richard Swift and Jill Smith. So please go ahead, Rich.
Thank you, Gary. I like the formal Richard as opposed to the Rich. Good afternoon, Chair Bernard and Commission. So here to talk to you today about a study session, a topic that came up actually a number of weeks ago, you know, with the fires and the pandemic. At this point, all the weeks and days have basically run together. Where we were asked to come in and talk with the board about potential motel hotel acquisition. So with the pandemic, this has become a very relevant topic. We've actually been using a pressure system within area motels to house in a temporary status in those motels people with a particular emphasis on those most at risk for COVID-19 infection who are living on the streets, those most at risk for significantly bad outcomes if they were to become infected. And that has proved to be extremely successful in terms of not only getting folks housed and reducing their risk, but then also moving folks from that motel status into actually more permanent housing. And we talk about that in the overall executive summary. So we had chatted with the board about two potential hotel or motels, one on McLaughlin in the Jennings Lodge area, and then also one in Estacada. We had probably more specific conversations with the folks in Jennings Lodge in terms of potential purchase. Those negotiations at this time have not gone forward, essentially due to funding. You know, at the time we were having those conversations, we did not have much dollars for funding. And then also with the pandemic and the use of the motels related to housing, our talks also fell off. But as I talked about, one of the benefits, particularly for motels, is their use for sheltering. The nice thing about them is that you can go do non-congregate sheltering as opposed to congregate, and that's been the emphasis for us during this pandemic. You know, some of the challenges associated with the motels is the fact that you know, if you're under 50 units, you really don't have economy of scale related to the staff you need to bring to bear to make the sheltering work. So you're really looking at those institutions, those properties that have 50 units or more. We have very few properties like that in the county that are over 50. And so then it becomes difficult for us to make these pencil out. You know, Jill can talk a little bit more about that. You know, there had been some dollars available, or at least I should say some discussions at the state level, like Project Turnkey in California, where they were looking at the potential to use CARES Act dollars for the acquisition of motels. We probably don't even need state legislation to go ahead and do that. There may be some funds between our 108, which we could take a loan against. And this is something that we had discussed with the board previously when we were looking at this seriously, about using $108. We still get into an issue about repayment. At the times that we had talked about this with the board and some of our thinking around this, the Metro 26210 Here Together was in consideration, but had not yet become a reality. Now that that's reality for us, some of those dollars could potentially be used to pay for the operating costs of a motel if we were to acquire for shelter. And this has been one of the things that was sort of a goal of ours, of the board, of seeing if we could find and create an opportunity for permanent sheltering in the county, because currently we do not have that. Right now what we have is temporary. Right now in preparation for our winter sheltering, particularly because of COVID-19, and we've chatted about this before, we're behind the 8 ball with a number of our congregate sites not interested in offering their sites for sheltering because of the risks of COVID-19 and their concerns. And so we are going to be having again a motel emphasis in regards to our sheltering for the coming winter. Right now, the funding that we use for this is available until Christmas Eve, or excuse me, New Year's Eve. And then at that point, if Congress does not carry over this funding, then we are going to be scrambling for dollars come January 1. So what I want to do is sort of stop there, see if Jill has anything she'd like to add to this in terms of, you know, the acquisition of Motel, Hillside, and we'll go from there. Jill?
Thank you, Rich. I have taken some time to speak to my peers, specifically Mark Jolin in Multnomah County and Comey Calavar, the Washington County Housing Authority, and just asked pros and cons. Multnomah County has purchased several motels for shelter as well as to transition them into housing. And it's turned into be a surprisingly expensive venture for them, one that Mark cautioned me to go into. He just said go into it with great caution because of zoning and building code differences, similar to what we're going through with, you know, our unit on Webster Road. Sometimes changing something that existed as something else can be really challenging and costly. They are leasing banks of motel units as a really good shelter strategy, and they have also been the ones that have cautioned us not to enter into small motels because the extreme costs of operations, to get the bang for your buck for that investment, you need a larger site because you really will be investing the majority of your funds at that space. Washington County, the Housing Authority recently purchased a fairly large hotel motel, which they are using for sheltering purposes only. And they have the same advice for us, very similar to what Multnomah County did. We have a need for this. We have a strong interest in this. And I think due to lack of funding, we're hoping major funds might be available for using a motel hotel system for shelter. Does anybody have questions?
Looks like Martha. Oops. Yeah, Martha.
Yeah, thanks for the update, you guys. So when you say big, how big is big? I mean, give me a range. I mean, I know a small hotel is at 20 units, and then are we talking like big, like the Monarch Hotel kind of a thing? I mean, what?
I think Washington County, what was just recently purchased was, I think it's 110 units. Is that right, Jill?
Okay.
I believe so. Oh, at least over 50, I think, is what you would need to strive for.
Over 50. And yeah, I think you've answered what is possibly my second question, but if you're getting these buildings, you're also acquiring them for operations and maintenance issues as well, right? So yeah. You have some threshold of where they have to be, you know, stable and solid before you buy them. You know, in other words, you don't want to buy one that's got the number of units you want, but there's serious pipe issues or, you know, HVAC issues and things of that sort. So.
Oh, absolutely. Due diligence, knowing what you're purchasing would be very important.
Okay. Thank you.
And to add to that, Commissioner Schrader, you know, we had actually looked at the Econo Lodge as a potential for acquisition, for use temporarily as a shelter, and then ultimately the development of affordable housing on that site for demolition. Okay. And it was going to require significant rezoning because it just was not zoned for what we would need in terms of housing to make the site.
Okay. Thank you.
I don't see any other questions. Any additional comments?
I just want to thank Rich and Jill for coming and talking about this. We hear a lot about this through the Association of Oregon Counties Health and Human Services Committee, because there's a lot of conversations happening at the state level. So I think being thoughtful about the cost of operations is really important, but also I just really appreciate you guys. You're right on the cusp of knowing everything that's going on, best practice, and how should we move forward, and really appreciate your advice for us as policymakers. So thank you.
All right. Thank you guys very much.
If I may, one thing, just so I have you all here, I do wish to, because I didn't get a chance at the update with the Housing Authority previously, I do want to thank Jill and her staff for all of the work that they have been going through related to the manor and our other sites along Holcomb related to the fires and working with our residents. They have been unbelievably tireless in terms of what it's taken. Stephen, hours and hours and hours working with PGE in terms of power, working with Walsh. Walsh actually brought a generator and additional switchgear into the manor to assist us. They've been a fantastic partner. So thank you, Jill.
Oh, thank you, Rich. One more plug for Walsh. They also had a food cart bring lunch to the manor residents when I was there delivering food boxes on Saturday, I think. And because those folks were without power for 2.5 days, other than temporary generator for the elevator and emergency lights. So, and Walsh provided that and the generator, and they've just gone above and beyond. They're so kind and thoughtful for the people that we serve.
Okay.
And your support means a tremendous amount to us as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's what I've heard about that contractor there. I know that in the Milwaukee project, Northwest Housing Alternatives, they did a really outstanding job with the community.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Gary, what's up next? I think that's the last one, isn't it?
That did for today, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
All right. Well, thank you, and we'll see you next time.
Yep. Breathe well.
Thanks. With that, we're adjourned for today. Thank you.
Thanks.